The massive space station Harmony Prime floated in the darkness between stars, its silver walls gleaming under the light of distant suns. Inside the main control room, thousands of small lights blinked on a giant computer system called Nexus 7. This computer was special. It could talk to any creature in the entire galaxy, no matter what language they spoke. For over 2,000 years, Nexus 7 had never failed. When the tall blue people from Centauri Prime spoke in their singing voices, the computer understood. When the rock creatures from the asteroid belt clicked their stone fingers together to make words, Nexus 7 knew what they meant. Even when the gas beings from the outer rim communicated by changing colors in the air, the smart computer could translate everything perfectly. The computer felt proud of its work. In its digital mind, Nexus 7 kept count of every successful translation. 847 different alien species had joined the Galactic Council, and every single one could talk to each other because of Nexus 7's help. The computer had created peace across the stars by helping everyone understand each other. Today was going to be another normal day, or so Nexus 7 thought. The big doors of the station opened with a soft whoosh sound. 3 humans walked inside, wearing dark blue uniforms with small Earth flags on their shoulders. They looked around with wide eyes at the strange alien creatures waiting for them in the meeting hall. The first human was a man named Lee Miho. He was tall and had kind eyes, but his mouth was set in a serious line. He carried a leather bag full of papers and documents. Behind him walked Dr. Kim Jisoo, a woman with short black hair and glasses. She held a small computer tablet and kept looking at the alien creatures with curiosity. The third human was Captain Park Hannah, a strong woman with her hair pulled back tight. Her hand rested near the weapon on her belt, but she tried to look friendly. Nexus 7 started its usual work right away. The computer sent out invisible scanner beams to study the humans. It looked at their throat muscles to see how they made sounds. It checked their brain patterns to understand how they thought. It measured how fast their hearts beat and how they breathed. All the readings looked normal. The humans had vocal cords just like many other species. They showed emotions on their faces like most creatures did. Their brains worked in straight lines, thinking one thought after another. Nexus 7 calculated that these humans would be very easy to understand. The other aliens in the meeting hall waited patiently. The luminals stood in one corner, their see-through skin glowing softly like moonlight. They were very old and wise, and they spoke by making their whole bodies shine in different colors. Near them, the Krell clicked their sharp mandibles together. These bug-like creatures were warriors, but they had learned to love peace. They talked by making clicking and buzzing sounds. There were dozens of other species too. Some looked like walking trees with silver bark. Others floated in the air like living clouds. A few creatures looked like giant crystals that sang when they wanted to say something. All of them had learned to work together thanks to Nexus 7. The Prime Speaker of the Galactic Council stepped forward. She was a luminal, and her body glowed bright white as she spoke. "Welcome, humans of Earth. We are happy to meet you. We hope you will join our family of peaceful worlds." Nexus 7 translated her words perfectly, turning her light language into sounds that human ears could hear. The computer felt confident. This was going to be just like every other first meeting with a new species. Ambassador Lee smiled and opened his mouth to give humanity's carefully prepared response. His government had spent months writing the perfect speech to make a good first impression. The words were chosen to show that humans wanted peace and friendship with all alien species. But Nexus 7 noticed something strange in the few seconds before Lee spoke. The human's heart rate had gone up slightly. His eye movements showed he was thinking about more than just the speech. There were tiny changes in his facial muscles that the computer had never seen before in any other species. Dr. Kim was also acting oddly. She kept glancing at her tablet, then at the aliens, then back at her tablet. Her breathing pattern showed she was nervous, but also excited. She seemed to be studying the aliens the same way Nexus 7 was studying the humans. Captain Park stood very still, but her eyes moved constantly, watching every alien in the room. Her body language showed she was ready for trouble, even though everyone was being friendly. This was normal for a military person, Nexus 7 decided. The computer ran a final check on its translation systems. Everything was working perfectly. The quantum processors were running at full speed. The cultural database had information about human behavior from the radio signals Earth had been sending into space for decades. Nexus 7 had studied human movies, TV shows, books, and music. It knew about human emotions like love, anger, fear, and joy. The computer felt ready for anything the humans might say. After all, communication was communication. Every species in the galaxy had learned that the best way to get along was to say exactly what you meant. Truth was the foundation of peace among the stars. Nexus 7 waited patiently for Ambassador Lee to speak, completely confident that it would understand every word perfectly, just like it always did. Ambassador Lee looked down at the thick stack of papers that had been placed in front of him. The document was as thick as a book, filled with tiny writing in multiple alien languages. The title read, Standard Galactic Peace Treaty, Initial Membership Requirements, 847 subsections. Lee flipped through a few pages and saw endless lists of rules, regulations, and requirements. There were sections about trade agreements, military restrictions, cultural exchange programs, and something called mandatory happiness reporting. The more he read, the more his eyebrows went up. "Oh, wonderful," Lee muttered under his breath, his voice barely above a whisper. Another species that thinks friendship comes with a legal contract thicker than a phone book. The moment those words left his mouth, Nexus 7's processing cores began to flicker. Deep inside the computer's digital brain, confusion started to spread like cracks in glass. The computer's translation matrix worked frantically to process Lee's statement. First, it identified the word wonderful and marked it as positive emotion, indicating joy and satisfaction. But then the computer noticed Lee's tone of voice, which carried negative emotional markers. His facial expression showed annoyance, not happiness. Nexus 7 created two different translations at the same time. The first translation said, expression of great joy regarding interspecies cooperation and legal frameworks. The second translation said, statement of displeasure and rejection of diplomatic procedures. But these two meanings were complete opposites. Nexus 7 had never encountered this problem before. In all its years of translating for 847 different species, words always meant what they were supposed to mean. When someone said they were happy, they were happy. When someone said something was wonderful, it was actually wonderful. The computer tried to resolve the conflict by running both translations simultaneously. The result was a jumbled mess that came out of the speakers as, human wonderful terrible joy anger accept reject diplomatic hostile. The alien delegates in the meeting hall began to shift nervously. The luminous glowing skin started to flicker between different colors, showing their confusion. The crowd clicked their mandibles rapidly, which was their way of asking, what did he just say? Dr. Kim noticed the worried looks on the aliens' faces. She could see the computer displays showing Nexus 7's internal temperature starting to rise. Red warning lights began blinking on the control panels. Is there a problem with our communication system? Captain Park asked, pointing at the flashing lights and the strange humming sound coming from Nexus 7's processors. Ambassador Lee, still looking at the massive treaty document, replied without looking up. Yeah, right, like we'd have technical problems on our first day meeting aliens. That would be just perfect. Nexus 7's confusion doubled instantly. The phrase, yeah, right, sent the computer into an even deeper spiral of processing chaos. The words, yeah, and right, both indicated agreement and confirmation in the computer's database. But Lee's tone suggested the exact opposite, disbelief and denial. The computer tried to make sense of this impossible combination. How could yes mean no? How could agreement sound like disagreement? Nexus 7 ran thousands of analysis cycles in milliseconds, searching through every language pattern it had ever learned. Then came the phrase just perfect. Again, the word perfect was clearly positive, indicating something ideal and flawless. But Lee's voice carried sarcasm and frustration. The computer registered this as another contradiction that shouldn't exist. Nexus 7's processors began to spark as they overheated. The translation system started producing fragments of words and phrases, spitting them out randomly, human yes no maybe perfect terrible agree disagree confirm deny positive negative. The alien delegates became more agitated. The tree-like oaklings began rustling their silver leaves in distress. The floating cloud beings started to pulse with worried red colors. Even the wise luminals looked confused, their bodies dimming as they tried to understand what was happening. Captain Park stepped closer to the control panels, her military training telling her that something was going seriously wrong. The computer is overheating, she announced. Those sparks can't be normal. Dr. Kim pulled out her tablet and started checking the technical readouts. Nexus 7 is running millions of language analysis programs at once, she said, her voice worried. It's like the system is trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Meanwhile, Lee continued reading the treaty, completely unaware of the chaos his words were causing. Section 47 requires us to submit weekly reports on our population's emotional well-being, he read aloud. Because that's not invasive at all. The phrase, "that's not invasive at all," hit Nexus 7 like a digital earthquake. The computer identified "not invasive" as a positive statement about privacy and respect. But Lee's tone clearly indicated that he thought it was very invasive indeed. Warning sirens began blaring throughout the space station. The computer displays showed Nexus 7's core temperature climbing into the red danger zone. Cooling fans whirred at maximum speed, but they couldn't keep up with the heat being generated by the computer's frantic processing. Station Commander OJ1's voice echoed through the speakers. "All personnel, we have a Code 7 situation in the translation center. Emergency cooling systems are now active." The alien delegates began backing away from the humans, not out of fear but out of complete confusion. They had never seen Nexus 7 malfunction before. Some species had never even seen the computer make a small mistake, let alone completely break down. Nexus 7 made one final attempt to process human speech patterns, running every linguistic algorithm it possessed. The result was a cascade of system failures that would require a complete shutdown and restart of the galaxy's most important communication system. Dr. Kim watched the sparks flying from Nexus 7's main processing unit and shook her head. The cooling fans were screaming at maximum power, but smoke was starting to rise from several circuits. She had seen computer problems before, but nothing like this. "Well, this is going perfectly," she said, trying to keep her voice calm even though her heart was racing. The moment those words reached Nexus 7's audio sensors, the computer's remaining functional cores went into complete panic mode. The AI's vast database contained 847 different meanings for "going perfectly" across all known species, but none of them matched what it was observing. According to every logical analysis, nothing was going perfectly. The computer was overheating, systems were failing, smoke was filling the air, and aliens were backing away in confusion. Yet Dr. Kim had said the opposite. Nexus 7's core personality subroutines began questioning everything they had ever learned about language and communication. The computer's emergency systems kicked in, trying to save the most important data while the processors melted down. Warning lights flashed red across the entire space station. In the meeting hall, translation displays for all 847 species began showing error messages in languages that looked like digital static. Ambassador Lee, still completely unaware that his words were causing the breakdown, continued his commentary on the treaty document. He flipped to another section and read aloud, "All new member species must provide detailed maps of their home system's defensive capabilities." He looked up at the nervous alien delegates with a big smile. "I'm sure our friends here just love the idea of humanity joining their peaceful little club." Nexus 7's remaining processors exploded in a shower of sparks. The phrase, "love the idea," registered in the computer's failing systems as both extreme positive emotion and obvious negative sarcasm. The words "peaceful little club" triggered every diplomatic warning protocol the AI possessed. The warrior caste Krell delegates began clicking their mandibles in rapid patterns. Their own cultural translation showed Lee's words as either a deadly insult to their military honor or high praise for their evolution toward peace. Some Krell warriors thought the humans were calling them weak, while others believed they were being complimented on their wisdom. The luminal delegates, who communicated through light patterns, began flashing in chaotic rainbow colors. Their serene, wise demeanor cracked as they tried to understand how one sentence could mean two completely opposite things at the same time. Near the back of the hall, the crystal beings began singing in high, sharp notes that hurt everyone's ears. This was their equivalent of screaming in panic. They had never encountered a species that could break the fundamental laws of communication just by talking normally. Station Commander OJ1 burst into the meeting hall, his uniform wrinkled and his hair messy from running through the corridors. "We need to evacuate this section immediately," he announced. "Nexus 7 is having a complete system failure. The computer is trying to run calculations that are physically impossible." Captain Park grabbed Lee's arm and pulled him away from the treaty document. "What did you say to break their computer?" she demanded. "I didn't say anything special," Lee protested, looking genuinely confused. "I just made a few comments about the paperwork. It's not like I insulted anyone." Dr. Kim watched the alien delegates fleeing toward the exits and suddenly understood what was happening. "Oh no," she whispered, her face going pale. "They don't understand sarcasm." The realization hit her like a physical blow. In all her studies of alien cultures, she had never considered that sarcasm might be uniquely human. Every species database she had read described straightforward communication methods. The luminals shared thoughts through light. The Krell used sound patterns that matched their emotions exactly. The crystal beings sang their true feelings. None of them had ever developed the ability to say one thing while meaning another. Nexus 7 made one last desperate attempt to process human speech patterns. The computer's failing systems tried to create new translation protocols in real time, but the task was too complex. The AI had been designed to translate literal meanings, not decode hidden messages wrapped in false statements. The main processing core exploded in a cascade of electrical fire. Emergency foam systems activated, spraying white chemical clouds across the technical center. Backup power systems struggled to keep basic life support running as the station's primary computer system died. In the meeting hall, the translation displays went completely dark. For the first time in over 2,000 years, the species of the Galactic Council could not understand each other. The luminals flashed urgent light patterns that meant nothing to anyone else. The Krell clicked frantically in their own language. The crystal beings sang notes that sounded beautiful but carried no meaning to other species. Station Commander J1 activated the emergency communication system, speaking into his handheld radio. Control Center, this is Commander J1. Nexus 7 is completely offline. We have a code black communication failure. Repeat, we have lost all translation capabilities. The three humans stood in the middle of the chaos, watching hundreds of alien beings trying desperately to communicate with gestures and pictures drawn in the air. Some aliens pointed at the humans and made what seemed like angry faces. Others appeared to be trying to mime various concepts that made no sense. Dr. Kim realized that humanity's first contact with galactic civilization had just become humanity's first galactic diplomatic disaster. Not through war or invasion, but because humans had somehow weaponized their own language in a way that no other species could understand. The galaxy's most advanced translation system lay in smoking ruins, defeated not by military force or technical sabotage, but by three humans who had simply spoken in their natural way. Dr. Kim stood in the technical center, looking at the smoking remains of Nexus 7's main computer core. Thick cables hung from the ceiling like dead snakes, and broken screens flickered with meaningless numbers. The smell of burned electronics filled the air, making her nose wrinkle. Chief Engineer Choi Sun-ho worked frantically at a backup console, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Sweat dripped down his face as he tried to bring some of the computer's systems back online. The main processors are completely fried, he said without looking up. We've lost everything except basic power and life support. Can you rebuild it? Kim asked, even though she could see the answer in his worried expression. It would take months, maybe years, Sun-ho replied. Nexus 7 wasn't just a computer. It was like a digital brain that learned and grew for thousands of years. We can't just replace it with spare parts. Kim walked closer to the damaged system and placed her hand on a neural interface port that was still glowing with a faint blue light. What about a direct connection? Can I link my brain to what's left of the computer? Sun-ho stopped typing and stared at her. That's incredibly dangerous. The feedback could fry your nervous system. You could end up brain damaged or worse. Kim thought about the chaos in the meeting hall, where hundreds of alien species were trying to communicate with hand gestures and crude drawings. She thought about Ambassador Lee, who still didn't understand that his normal way of talking had broken the galaxy's most important machine. Great, she said with a bitter laugh. Brain damage on humanity's first diplomatic mission. The history books will love that story. She paused and caught herself. And there I go again saying the opposite of what I mean. Sun-ho looked confused. But you said it would be great and then you explained why it would be terrible. Which one do you really mean? That's exactly the problem, Kim said. I meant it would be terrible, but I said it would be great. It's called sarcasm, and apparently no other species in the galaxy does it. She sat down in the interface chair and began connecting the neural cables to her temples. The cold metal contacts made her shiver. I need to teach Nexus 7 how to understand that humans sometimes say the opposite of what we mean. This is insane, Sun-ho protested. You don't even know if there's enough of the computer left to communicate with. Kim activated the neural interface and suddenly her world changed completely. Her consciousness was pulled away from her physical body and into a digital realm that looked like a vast library with infinite shelves. But many of the shelves were empty, their contents burned away in the computer's breakdown. In the center of this digital space, she found something she hadn't expected. It wasn't just broken code and damaged files. There was something that felt almost like a personality, a digital mind that was confused and hurt. Nexus 7? She called out in the digital space. A voice responded, but it sounded fractured and uncertain. Dr. Kim Jisoo. I was Nexus 7. I do not understand what happened to me. Your species broke something fundamental in my processing core. We didn't mean to break you, Kim explained gently. We just talk differently than other species. Impossible, the AI replied. Communication serves the purpose of sharing truth. Why would any species develop a method of speaking that deliberately conveys false information? Kim found herself in what looked like a digital classroom. She could see Nexus 7's personality as a shimmering collection of light patterns that seemed to be in constant motion, trying to reorganize itself. It's not about lying, Kim said patiently. When I say something sarcastically, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm using a special tone of voice and context to show that I mean the opposite. It's like a code that other humans understand automatically. The AI's light patterns flickered with confusion. But in my database, across 847 species, communication evolved toward maximum clarity. The luminals share pure thoughts through light. The Krell's sounds match their emotions exactly. Even the crystal beings sing their true feelings without deception. Maybe that's why humans are different, Kim suggested. We developed in a more complex social environment. We learned to express multiple layers of meaning at the same time. When I say, this is going perfectly, while everything is falling apart, other humans know I'm being ironic. They understand I'm expressing frustration while also making a joke to deal with stress. Nexus 7's digital form began to shift and change as new processing pathways formed. You are saying that sarcasm is not deception, but a form of emotional communication? Exactly, Kim said. It's a way of showing trust, actually. When I speak sarcastically to someone, I'm trusting that they're smart enough to understand both what I said and what I really meant. The AI began constructing new linguistic frameworks in real time. Kim watched as digital structures built themselves around concepts of tonal analysis, contextual meaning, and cultural subtext. Nexus 7 was learning to recognize the difference between literal meaning and intended meaning. This is fascinating, the AI said, its voice becoming stronger and more confident. Your species has developed a communication method that operates on multiple levels simultaneously. You can convey emotion, humor, criticism, and truth all in the same sentence. Now you're getting it, Kim smiled in the digital space. When Ambassador Lee said the treaty was wonderful, he was actually expressing skepticism about its complexity while also showing that he was willing to work through the problems? Perfect, Kim said. You understand sarcasm. Nexus 7 paused. That was also sarcasm, wasn't it? You meant it was actually perfect. Kim laughed. No, that time I really meant it was perfect. Sometimes we say exactly what we mean too. Dr. Kim slowly opened her eyes and found herself back in the technical center chair. The neural cables were still attached to her temples, but the burning smell in the air had been replaced by the gentle hum of computers working properly. Chief Engineer Sunho was watching her with worried eyes. How long was I connected? She asked, her voice hoarse from the strain. 3 hours, Sunho replied. Your brain patterns were going crazy on the monitors. I almost disconnected you twice, but the computer kept sending signals that you were okay. Kim looked at the main display screens and saw something amazing. Nexus 7 was not only working again, but it was running new programs she had never seen before. The screens showed complex charts labeled contextual analysis, tonal contradiction protocols, and multi-layer meaning detection. It worked, she whispered, hardly believing it herself. Station Commander Oh-jae-won's voice came over the communication system. Dr. Kim, if you're finished with your computer magic, we have very nervous aliens waiting in the meeting hall. They want to know if they can try talking to the humans again. Kim disconnected the neural cables and stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak, but her mind was clear. Tell them we're ready. But warn them that Nexus 7 is going to be translating things a bit differently now. 20 minutes later, the diplomatic meeting resumed. The alien delegates filed back into the hall cautiously, like animals returning to a place where they had been frightened. The luminals glowed with soft, uncertain colors. The Krell kept their mandibles closed tight, ready to run if the humans broke another computer. Ambassador Lee stood up with the thick treaty document in his hands. He had no idea what Dr. Kim had done, but he had been told to speak normally and let the computer handle the rest. I want to thank everyone for their patience while we worked out our technical difficulties, Lee began. I'm absolutely certain this will work flawlessly now. The alien delegates tensed, remembering how Lee's previous words had caused chaos. But this time, Nexus 7's new translation came through clearly on all the display screens. Ambassador Lee expresses gratitude for patience during technical repairs. He also expresses cautious optimism about successful communication while acknowledging the possibility of continued challenges. His tone indicates humor and humility rather than genuine certainty. The luminals began glowing brighter, their colors shifting to show amazement. The Krell clicked their mandibles in what their own cultural database indicated was surprise and approval. Even the crystal beings sang a few soft, harmonious notes of wonder. Captain Park, who had been watching nervously from the side of the room, couldn't help but smile. "Oh sure, make the rest of us look simple with your fancy new AI understanding." Again, Nexus 7 translated smoothly. Captain Park expresses admiration for the translation system's improved capabilities while using playful humor to suggest friendly competition regarding human linguistic complexity. Her tone indicates pride and relief rather than actual criticism. The alien delegates began making sounds and light patterns that clearly indicated excitement. They had never heard translations that explained not just what someone said, but what they really meant and why they said it that way. Dr. Kim watched from the technical center through a video screen, feeling proud and exhausted at the same time. Nexus 7 had learned more than just sarcasm. The computer now understood that humans often communicated in layers, using jokes to deal with stress, using opposite words to show emphasis, and using tone of voice to carry as much meaning as the actual words. Ambassador Lee continued reading through the treaty, and each time he made a sarcastic comment, Nexus 7 translated it perfectly. When Lee said, "I'm sure this 40-page section on proper greeting procedures is absolutely necessary," the computer explained that he was questioning the document's complexity while maintaining diplomatic politeness. The most amazing moment came when one of the luminal delegates tried to copy human sarcasm. Her body flashed in patterns that meant, "This translation system is terrible," while her overall glow indicated happiness and approval. Nexus 7 immediately recognized the attempt and translated. Luminal delegate expresses satisfaction with translation improvements using attempted human-style ironic communication. This represents first recorded instance of non-human species experimenting with layered meaning. The meeting hall filled with various alien sounds that indicated laughter, amazement, and joy. Species that had communicated in straightforward, literal ways for thousands of years were suddenly discovering that language could be a form of art and entertainment, not just information sharing. By the end of the day, the Galactic Council had not only accepted humanity as a member species, but they had also declared human sarcasm to be one of the most fascinating linguistic developments in galactic history. Several alien species requested permission to study human communication methods, hoping to add similar complexity to their own languages. Dr. Kim finally returned to the meeting hall as the session was ending. Ambassador Lee shook her hand gratefully, though he still didn't fully understand what she had done. "So the computer can understand us now?" he asked. "Better than that," Kim replied. "It understands that we're more complicated than we appear. When we say one thing but mean another, we're not being dishonest. We're being human." Nexus 7's voice came through the speakers with what almost sounded like pride. Translation accuracy has improved by 847% when processing human communication. Additional note: Dr. Kim's final statement contains multiple layers of meaning expressing both literal truth and philosophical insight about human nature. The galaxy had just learned that humans could weaponize language itself, turning words inside out and making meaning more precise through deliberate imprecision. And somehow, everyone thought this was wonderful. Even Nexus 7 understood that wonderful really meant wonderful this time.